Will Social Security stop in 2023? It's complicated. As the government gridlock continues over the debt limit, many benefit programs could be in danger. Let's talk about what you can expect as we go through this year and what you need to do to protect yourself. So, just to quickly recap what is going on with the federal government, the United States borrows a lot of money. Our government also has a debt ceiling, which says how much money the government can borrow. We hit that debt ceiling in January, which means that the government can't borrow anymore. Congress can't really agree on what to do about it. So in the meantime, the Treasury Department is currently taking extraordinary measures to make sure that we don't exceed that limit, mostly by shuffling paperwork around in weird ways. But these extraordinary measures can only last so long, and the Treasury estimates that on June 5th, 2023, we'll hit that ceiling, and if Congress hasn't resolved the debt limit by that time, there won't be much more they can do, and the United States could default on its debt for the first time in history, and that could bring some serious consequences, including missed benefit payments. In fact, the Treasury itself links the debt limit to important benefit programs like Social Security and Medicare, and even military salaries and more. Their website says, quote, "The debt limit is the total amount of money that the United States government is authorized to borrow to meet its existing legal obligations, including Social Security and Medicare benefits, military salaries, interest on the national debt, tax refunds, and other payments. Failing to increase the debt limit would have catastrophic economic consequences. It could cause the government to default on its legal obligations, an unprecedented event in American history that would precipitate another financial crisis and threaten the jobs and savings of everyday Americans, putting the United States right back in a deep economic hole just as the country is recovering from the recent recession," end quote. To be very clear, raising the debt limit isn't about authorizing new spending. It's about making sure that America can spend the money it already promised to spend on existing programs. And that's why it could potentially affect benefit programs like Social Security, Medicare, and veterans benefits. Because the United States has never defaulted on its debt before, it's hard to be sure exactly how all of this would play out. We don't exactly have a handbook or a bunch of regulations describing what the government will do if it runs out of money. It's stressful, and there are a lot of unknowns. But there are some things we do know. Economic experts Wendy Edelberg and Laura Scheiner from the Brookings Institution wrote, "The Treasury did have a contingency plan in place in 2011 when the government faced a similar situation, and it seems likely that the Treasury would follow the contours of that plan if the debt limit were to bind this year. Under that plan, they will delay payments to agencies, contractors, Social Security beneficiaries, and Medicare providers rather than attempting to pick and choose what payments to make that are due on a given day. Delaying payments to Social Security beneficiaries would be catastrophic for the 70 million people who rely on benefits from that program. That 70 million people would not receive their benefits on time, which would mean they wouldn't be able to pay their bills on time, which could result in homelessness, hunger, and a whole bunch of very, very bad things for a very vulnerable population. Now, a lot of people have been saying, we don't need to worry about Social Security because the government is obligated to pay for it. They have to because they said they would, and it's part of the law, right? Well, yes, but also no. As Edelberg and Scheiner wrote, even though failure to pay Social Security would result in legal challenges, quote, "It is not clear how such litigation would turn out, as the law imposes contradictory requirements on the government. Treasury is required to make payments, honor the debt, and not go above the debt limit. 3 things that cannot happen all at once." Basically, hitting that debt limit will force the Treasury and the government into an impossible choice. Of those 3 required things, which one will they do? Nobody really knows because this has never happened before, but it seems like common sense to say that if the money doesn't exist, then they can't make those payments. Others have said that Social Security will not be affected because it is paid from a trust fund and therefore isn't subject to the federal debt limit, but that's not true either, unfortunately. The Congressional Budget Office states, quote, "Debt subject to the limit consists of debt held by the public and debt held by government accounts. Debt held by government accounts is issued to the federal government's trust funds and other federal accounts for internal transactions. Trust funds for Social Security, military retirement, civil service retirement and disability, and Medicare account for most of that debt." Time magazine agrees with these assessments. They wrote, quote, "About 20%, just over $1 trillion of the federal budget went to Social Security, and around 13%, more than $760 billion, went to Medicare in 2022, making them two of the largest funded programs by the federal government. There are no disruptions in these programs expected for now. However, if the government defaults on its debt, that could cause delays in Social Security and Medicare payments, along with other key programs like veterans benefits and SNAP food assistance," end quote. Of course, it's not just benefit recipients that would be affected if this happens. According to Brookings Institution, the entire economy would feel the effects. America's debt would become more expensive, markets would tumble, jobs would be lost. Ultimately, the entire world would be expected to feel the effects of America's default. Our lawmakers know this, but our government is deeply divided, and they are struggling to come to an agreement. President Biden has stated clearly that he will not negotiate over the debt limit, and that Congress must pass a bipartisan debt ceiling lift with no conditions attached. But Congress can't agree on much of anything right now. Now, recently, both Democratic and Republican lawmakers have vowed to leave Medicare and Social Security alone in this fight, according to USA Today. But that doesn't help much if they can't reach an agreement before time runs out, because it will still cause delays. Now, the good news is that delays implies that you will eventually be made whole and that those missing payments will be made when Congress reaches an agreement. But that doesn't help you pay your rent or your mortgage or your utilities or buy food in the meantime. Delays mean waiting, and waiting isn't a luxury that most of us can afford. So, what can you do? First, you need to reach out to your lawmakers. I know I've been saying this a lot lately, and you're probably tired of hearing it, but it really does help. You need to use that tool at congress.gov to find your elected congresspeople and talk to them about this. Encourage them to raise the debt ceiling to protect vulnerable low-income seniors and other Americans who rely on these benefits. If we all stand together and make our voices heard, we can create change. Second, you need to start connecting with resources right now so that you can be prepared as possible if this happens. Know where your food banks are. Know what other resources exist in your area. Start stocking up on staple groceries if you can. And I know that seems impossible right now because the emergency allotments just ended, but try salvage stores and some of our other money-saving hacks to get more food in your cupboards. Do what you can to prepare, even if it's only a little, because we don't know what's going to happen. And third, brace yourself. Think about what you will do if this happens. Not in a panicked way, but in a practical way. I'm a big advocate for preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. If the government doesn't resolve this and we do end up seeing delays, would you be able to reach out to the people you owe and explain your situation? Would they work with you? How would you meet your basic needs without those benefits, even if it was just temporarily? Remember, if we do find ourselves in this situation, there will be millions of other people hurting alongside you, so companies will be more likely to show leniency in collecting debts. We saw that happen in the government shutdown of early 2019 and in the early days of the pandemic, so there is hope for that. That being said, I hope for all of our sakes that it never reaches that point. I hope that our lawmakers are able to pull us through this very quickly. But it's been a weird few years, and honestly, guys, anything is possible. Whatever happens, I will be here for you. Please don't forget to check out our recent videos. I'll see you there.